So this is a delicate subject.
Yes.
And we want to handle it with compassion and care. But it's very serious and we consider it very important. There's been a lot of use of the word gaslighting, and we want to help define the word. And also, we're seeing it used sometimes when it's not appropriate, and I think then it sometimes weakens the word for the people that really need it. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to, just with compassion and caring, help define that and maybe strengthen the use for people that really need it.
Right.
So this is Dr. Liz from Sex Positive Psych.
This is Kathy Bartuli from the Intimacy Dojo. And as a content note, we are going to be talking in this video about different kinds of abuse or manipulation. And so if that's a really strong trigger for you, go on to the next video.
Yeah. So I love definitions. We're both PhDs, and
well, PsyD. It's basically the same.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little different, but
Yeah. I think of all kinds of bad jokes, but never mind.
Well, it's not a real doctorate. It's like the less important doctorate in the psychology world. It's a whole thing. We're practice focused instead of research focused, which makes us less valid.
I have my PhD is in science and engineering, but engineering is considered. The physicists are like, oh, it's not real science.
Oh my gosh, I dated a physicist who told me all the time that psychology is not real science. I think that's just a physicist thing.
Yeah, they want to feel better about themselves because they're making about half of what most people are.
Right.
So anyway, total side note.
Side note.
So gaslighting, by definition, we're looking at Urban Dictionary, is a form of intimidation or psychological abuse where the false information is presented to the victim, making them doubt their own memory, perception, and quite often their sanity. So someone might say they might do something and then they deny knowing anything about it, or say they're imagining things.
Right.
And it's a very severe kind of abuse.
It is. And I want to read the second section from Urban Dictionary. A more psychological definition of gaslighting is an increasing frequency of systematically withholding factual information from and or providing false information to the victim, having the gradual effect of making them anxious, confused, and less able to trust their own memory and perception.
And I think that's really powerful, because if we can't trust our own perception, that's it can shake everything. It's not just with that one person. It's like, do I trust myself with this person and that person and making decisions?
Right.
So we don't mean in any of this discussion to imply that it's not serious.
No.
Or should not be taken very seriously.
No. Or that there aren't people who very genuinely experience gaslighting. Or that you can feel as though you have been gaslit, even if those factors were not necessarily involved.
Right. So one thing I want to bring out in this is that there are times when people will not remember something or have a different occurrence of it to them. That doesn't necessarily mean they're manipulating or maliciously gaslighting someone.
Right.
So if Liz and I went to the movies last night, just to give a trivial example to try to... and we both saw the same movie, and I'm like, do you remember that scene where they did this thing and it was so cool? And you're like, no, either you don't remember or you didn't have the same perspective on it.
Right.
That's not gaslighting. That's having a difference of opinion.
I think that in an effort to be more supportive of people who are expressing that they have experienced abuse or toxic behaviors, a lot of our communities have gotten to the point of applying some of these terms in ways that are not necessarily accurate. So I have sometimes seen gaslighting applied as a term to a situation where one person disagreed with someone else in a way that made that other person feel hurt. And while that is challenging, I don't know that that is always gaslighting.
I think that one of the key distinctions I would look at is, am I saying, like if we're going back to the silly example of a movie, and it's not to trivialize this, but to try to take some of the feelings out of it. If Liz is saying, no, that didn't happen, you didn't have that perspective, that perspective is wrong, versus that's not how I perceived it. So there's an owning of self versus you're crazy, that never happened.
Right. And I think, again, going back to this trivial example, it would be, Kathy says to me, oh, do you remember this scene from the movie? I remember that scene was there, but I don't want to talk about it. So I say, that scene didn't happen. Why do you keep saying that scene happened? What's wrong with you that you keep imagining that there was this scene in the movie? And then Kathy may even show me the movie and show me the scene. And I would say, that's not at all what you said. I don't understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Where there's this, again, it's increasing in frequency. It's systematic. It's a withholding of factual information or a denying of reality or providing of false information, not just a disagreement over perceptions or even a disagreement over facts.
Right. And I think that it's such a delicate topic because for so long in most of our culture, victims were denied and people would come forward and say, this is happening. And then people didn't want to deal with it. So the gaslighting was supported. If someone was gaslighting them or abusing them, it was re-emphasized by society.
Yeah.
So there's a really strong, in our community, a strong advocacy for victims.
And that's totally great.
Yes.
I think that the way I see that is that if we take the formal cultural approach to it as being like one side of a pendulum swing, where you deny every victim's report and you always question the victim, our community has swung to the other side in a very...
in some cases.
In some cases. And it's in an attempt to be very reinforcing and supportive of people who have had terrible experiences. And I think that we've, in that attempt, lost some of the nuance that's essential in dealing with these kinds of situations.
And I think that what I'm perceiving is there's a fear of being non-supportive. So people aren't always saying, hey, I don't really see that as malicious.
Right.
Which is really... there are people that don't have the same memories, the same experiences, or they can actually disagree with you without gaslighting you.
Yeah.
And I really care about the word because it's having this kind of definition is extremely important. And when it's being called out, if we're calling it out in places where it doesn't exist, or when we weaken the term by applying it where there's not malicious intent or actual abuse, then I think we weaken it for the people that really need it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that when we're describing these kinds of situations, what we're talking about is something very serious and very severe. Gaslighting is an attempt to undermine someone's ability to understand and perceive reality. And when we're applying it to disagreements that don't feel good, I think that we lose the importance of that term. And it becomes more difficult then for us to talk about these very severe situations because we no longer have that kind of language that creates that difference.
And one of my passions about this community, and I love so much, is that there's been a lot of freedom to express ourselves. And I've seen people lately that have been afraid to disagree with me in the concern that they would be gaslighting me if they disagreed. And I want there to be open dialogue. I want people to be able to say, I don't agree with you. And if you don't agree with this video, that's great.
Put the comment. We want this dialogue.
Do your own video. We don't want to start a flame war. We're not at all trying to start. This is not directed at anyone in particular. No. It's just a general trend that I'm concerned about. And we talked about this. Was like, I don't want our community to ever lose voices. I don't want our community to ever be shut down, because what we're creating together, a place where people can dialogue about anything. We can talk about sex. We can talk about issues that no one else is talking about. It's too valuable. So I really care that we have an ability for people to disagree with each other and not have it be seen as them taking away our voice.
Right. Yeah.
Unless they actually are.
Unless they are. Right. And I think that's the similar concern that I share, is that I talk to a lot of people who are very afraid about speaking out on some topics, who feel like if they say the wrong thing, they're going to get ostracized from the community, that they're going to get, publicly shamed. And I think that we need to find a way to empower all of the voices in our community, and in some ways, especially the ones that we don't agree with, because I think that when we refuse to listen to viewpoints that are different than our own, or when we, and I'm not saying like enable racism or enable sexism or enable any of those problematic things, but I think that we in the sex educator community have to some extent walled ourselves off from significant portions of the world because we won't listen to them or dialogue with them, and we won't include them in the work that we're doing because we feel like they're too backwards, or they're never going to agree, or it's not worth it.
Absolutely. And everybody gets to decide how much how much reserve they have to deal with it, because it is very stressful. Yeah. But I don't think we're going to change. Like, I have family members that I love deeply that voted for Trump and think there's nothing wrong and don't understand why I'm upset. And I am choosing to keep some distance there, but if I don't interact with them and explain my perspective, they're never, like, no one else is going to do the work for me.
And I think that my fear with some of this looser application of the term gaslighting in particular is that it leads to more silencing of voices in a way that is not helpful to any of us in the long term. Over a long enough timeline, all of us will do something that could be called gaslighting, but may or may not be. Over a long enough timeline, each and every one of us will end up violating someone's consent.
We're humans.
We're humans.
No matter how careful we are, that we're going to make mistakes. But making a mistake does not mean, or even a series of mistakes, is not the same as malicious intent.
Yeah.
And if we can, and it's certainly a very touchy time for everybody. Everybody's nerves are very raw, and like we want to be very gentle. We're, again, not meaning this as pointing a finger.
No, not at all.
It's an invitation to a dialogue and a request for people to double check their definitions and to be a little more careful about how we might be using words that are very powerful and very important to a lot of people, and that give meaning to something that maybe we're kind of blurring the lines a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully this was said with the respect and caring that we intend.
Absolutely. And again, if you disagree with us, please let us know.
Yeah.
We want this to be a dialogue. We don't want to silence anyone's voices. I'm not some epic voice of all the things. I don't have all the knowledge. I'm not perfect, and I think that this is a really difficult subject that we all need to work at talking about.
And I so respect that about this community. We're figuring it out as we go.
Yeah.
We're building something brand new, and that means there's going to be some clunky times. And I invite, if you can message below the video, or you can also, if you want to email me directly, Kathy,
email me directly as well.
Kathy@theintimacydojo.com.
sexpositivepsych@gmail.com.
So feel free to talk to us directly. We invite you to dialogue, not flame. If you're upset, we totally get. We're not, this is a very sensitive subject. We debated over whether to do the video, and we care enough about the community and what we're all creating together that we wanted to say something.
Right.
So if you're upset, maybe message us personally so that we can discuss some of it, rather than bringing the community in. To a dialogue is great, but if there's a lot of upset feelings, maybe we can discuss it privately. We love upgrades, and we're open to it.
All about upgrades. And I think for me, part of this video and other videos we're doing on these kind of topics is about helping to create a brave space in our community. There's some great links that we'll put below about the difference between a safe space and a brave space. And in a brave space, what you're doing is empowering each other to take risks and make mistakes, and definitely take accountability for those mistakes and make amends for those mistakes. But you're not expecting perfection from everyone, and you're understanding that some things are going to make folks uncomfortable, and that discomfort is not the same as lack of safety.
Yeah. So again, we hope this was said with compassion. Please let us know what you think.
Absolutely.
That we invite comments and upgrades, because that's all the only way we're all going to learn.
Right. Absolutely.
So with love.
With love.